We are live with your Thursday lunchtime footy fix. It's Footy Talks, and this week, alongside obviously KJ, who is usually here, no Stephen Caldwell. The captain is missing. We're told it's load management, but Terry Dunfield is an admirable replacement, and he has promised KJ to give us his very best Scottish accent.
He has, yes. No, always got lots of smiles with Terry and great insights. So I'm happy to have him on. And if you can analyze anything in a Scottish accent, I'm sure the laugh meter will go even higher, right, Tel?
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Right there, Terry Dunfield joining us on the show.
Yeah, okay, we better move on from that because neither of those were particularly Scottish. Lots of talk, KJ, about this potential return of Major League Soccer with everyone moving to Orlando to play in some kind of a World Cup-style tournament for the best part of a month, 6 weeks. And that could be something that sees all the teams go down there from around first week in June and stay there till maybe the end of July, early August. What are you hearing on that? As if the reports that have come out have all been from The Athletic, from the Washington Post, pretty similar in terms of their content. So it does seem as if this is something that the league is preparing for.
Yeah, it's something the league has been talking about almost on a daily basis for a couple of months now. Don Garber hinted at that in our conversation I had with him almost a month ago, I suppose it is now, on TSN. We've heard rumblings of this at TSN for a few weeks now, has been reported, as you said, by the excellent journalists Stephen Goff and Sam Stachel with The Athletic. And, I think, look, there's still a number of hurdles to go over this. I'll be interested to talk to Omar Gonzalez a little bit later from a player's point of view. I certainly want to ask him a couple of things about that. We're starting to see more and more personalities of players in different sports starting to speak up about whether they should be coming back and saying, Danny Rose, for example, in football, we saw the Blake Snell, the Tampa Bay Rays pitcher, big news this morning coming out and talking about not wanting to return to play for baseball while it's under the current circumstances. So I think a lot of things need to be continued to be accomplished off the field, but on the field, from a sporting integrity competition point of view, I think it's exciting if they can get everybody on board and everybody feels comfortable. Why not go into that environment, Terry? And at the end of the day, I think this is from a player's point of view, is something that is they're aching to get back. They want to play competitive games. They want to do what they do best. And I think an opportunity to try and play for a trophy, and maybe a trophy that can continue to exist going forward past the pandemic, hopefully, is good. More, the more competitive games, the less forgiving matches we can get, the better.
Yeah, well said. I think as long as safety and it is taken into consideration, and players and fans and everybody, media involved, are going to be okay, then why not? And I think we're going to have to be creative in these times, and we're going to have to find a way, and we're all going to have to adapt. But at the end of the day, we want to see soccer, and players want to play, and it'll be interesting to see who gets that competitive edge. My gut says that you're almost going to be managing like an international manager with a lot of games in a short amount of time. You're managing a pretty big squad. Squads all in the same kind of area. It's almost like the Euros or a World Cup a little bit, but it brings a new set of variables. It's pretty exciting, and however we move forward, I'm 100% on board and looking forward to it.
Maybe something as well, KJ, and you've said in the past, the league needs, even when everything is normal, the league needs something maybe to give it a spark in the middle of June or July, or whether it's an off-season or pre-season, some kind of a pre-season tournament, just to get some extra games and to give it a bit of a boost. Who's to say that this couldn't work in the future moving forward, where it splits the start and the end of the regular season with, as long as, for me, it has to be something that counts towards the regular season. So if you win this tournament that MLS launches with, then you get 10 points or 50, whatever it is, to go to the regular season standings, and that's reflected on how many games you win or draw during this tournament. It has to be connected in some way, KJ.
I think it does this year. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not so sure about going forward, whether it needs to be connected. I do think, to your point, Terry can certainly speak a bit better than this with me, but as an observer, I feel like I would like the tempo of the games to be a little higher. And I understand that there's a lot of factors in Europe compared to the European game in terms of travel and weather and culture and a lot of other things over here that sometimes struggle with that. But I do think, having spoken to some players about this, that some of the high level players are craving that. that less forgiving mentality where they're trying to get everybody on board. And sometimes, for lack of a better term, maybe the game 17 in June isn't necessarily important for them. Or even, a manager like, Peter Vermees, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, who's the longest term performing manager in MLS at Sporting Kansas City. I spoke to him about this in the offseason, and he told me, he said, no matter what we do, I cannot convince my players that the first half of the season or the first 10 to 12 games of the season are that important. It is trying to get going forward. So let's try and find a way where we can get more important games going, because we're in danger otherwise of having teams, particularly in an era where I think more and more teams are spending more money than others. We're in danger where some teams can really lack that amount of competitive games for a full season, Terry, which is a little bit worrying for me. So I think, to Luke's point, the more, get another tournament going and figure out how to do it, I think is exciting for the growth of the league and for players who want to win trophies.
I think Peter Vermees probably should have told his team that last year. I know they were in the Champions League, but it's an interesting one because I think MLS has never been in this spot before. I think our league is in a great spot, and the last thing you want to do is jeopardize the quality of the product. And there's some quality players in this league, top managers, top facilities, and it's taken time to get here. And the last thing we want to do is take 3 steps back with maybe not having the same product as we had before. So I think that has to be taken into consideration. I think you bring up a really interesting point, KJ, is how do you, each game means something and it's challenging, and you can't say, okay, fine, whatever, we didn't win this game, we're going to win next week, we'll make the playoffs, so on. So, and almost having that knockout feel to it. And so when you're putting up that format together, I think that's a crucial piece, and we're all competitors, and this is a big part of what drives professional soccer or soccer at any level.
Let's swing it back to Toronto FC. The game of the week on torontofc.ca is coming tomorrow night, and it is from last year when TFC went into Montreal at Stade Saputo. It was after the Gold Cup, and it was the start of what was a very good end to the season for TFC. That second half of the campaign, very much different to the first in terms of the way they played, in terms of how they played defensively. And a huge reason for that is the man that joins us on the show today. That game that TFC are showing tomorrow night online at torontofc.ca was the debut of Omar Gonzalez. And Omar Gonzalez is able to join us on Footy Talks today. So he'll be with us in just a second. Obviously, TFC back training this week. Different situation to, I'm sure, the last time Omar Gonzalez was at the TFC training facility. Hey, Omar, thanks for being with us.
Hey, Omar.
Listen, last time you left the facility, you were in the midst of a season. You were training with the full squad, and now it's a case of going back there with all of your gear on, not being able to see anybody. You've got a quarter of the pitch while you're training individually. It was a little bit surreal being back there this week.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on. Appreciate that. I was listening to you guys before, and you guys had some good points on everything going on right now. So, but yeah, for me, it was pretty surreal to go back and just be in the parking lot hanging out for a while until you get waved in, check your temperature and all that. And you're not able to go in the building. Usually you go walk right in, say hi to everyone, have your breakfast, get ready to train. And now you just walk straight to the pitch, wave to the coaches from afar, and start doing whatever they sent you. So it's very interesting, but it's nice to be on a pitch, and it's nice to be able to open up, and so that's great.
I was going to ask you about that, Omar. Obviously, it's not ideal, but I guess compared to where you were a week ago or 2 weeks ago, maybe you can just share with our listeners and our viewers what that's like. We had Justin Morrow on a couple of weeks ago, and he said he was just finding it difficult to even kick a ball. He didn't want to go to the park and break local authority rules. And, he was staying at home with his kids. But how is it now to get out there, at least on the small amount of area that you have, and just do things that you're more comfortable with, that we all took for granted before this happened?
Yeah. Well, I'm lucky enough to have a really good setup here at home. I have a bike. I have all my weights that I need, pretty heavy weights. And then I have this Toka machine, which Eddie Lewis started. And so it's this machine that shoots out balls to you. So I was able to get, touches every other day, but not too much or else I get tight. So, but I was able to get a lot of touches in, but there's no comparison to being on the field. And and touching a ball on grass and getting that feeling, because I was on hard surface for the past, I don't know, 7 weeks. I did try and go to a park one day to do some sprints, and I got stopped by some cops, and they said because it was Friday and they were feeling good, they weren't going to fine me the $800. So I got lucky that day.
TFC, though, have been very active, haven't they? And we spoke to Ali Curtis a few weeks ago on the show about what they have been doing for you guys as players, including, and not just about the making sure you've got what you need to be able to try and do what you can physically, but getting meals delivered, also mentally, trying to make sure everyone stays together to get through what must be a difficult mental situation.
No, I think TFC has done an amazing, incredible job in how they've been treating us throughout this crazy time. With the meals being delivered, that helps out so much. I'm taken care of in that front, and just have to worry about making meals for the rest of my family. But that helps out so much. And on the other front, we've been having Zoom meetings and we work out together. And so although we're not physically together, just seeing each other, having a little bit of banter that you would normally have in person, you're having it virtual banter, and it's pretty fun. And we have these weekly, we used to have these weekly yoga and, circuit training things that were actually fun, and getting to see everyone working out in their own place was refreshing. And just, it's not the same being together, but it's close.
Omar, there's been some discussions about potentially how you can get back on the field in a competitive environment. I'm sure you've seen some of the stories that we're all hearing about, maybe taking you to one site, maybe Orlando, or maybe having some kind of tournament style. I don't really want to turn this conversation into what that would be like from a competitive sporting point of view, because I think you could offer so much more. What's the chatter been like, Omar, amongst the players in terms of what this could possibly be? And if this does happen, what kind of questions would you have as a representative of the MLSPA towards the league to make sure that you obviously get everything that you need to be ticked off before you feel comfortable and safe to go out there and do what you do best?
Right. Well, first and foremost, we have to make sure the players' health and safety are taken care of. And once we can be assured of that, I'm sure guys are willing to go to any neutral site or any place that's open that will allow us to come there and start training as a group and getting some games in. Everyone's looking forward to just being on the pitch and playing competitively, playing for something. And so whatever that looks like, I think we're getting through all the details right now, and it's just slow because you have to make sure that everything is put in place and we're taking the right precautions, and we have to be very smart because we don't want to hinder other communities, by heading there and them not being prepared and things like that. So we have to take everyone into account when we're thinking about this. And I think we have very smart people, thinking of ideas, and then we all have to come together and sort of, give the okay. But I think we're on the right track. And hopefully by next month, we can be heading somewhere and starting to train to work up to playing games.
The reason we've got you on this week, Omar, is because TFC's Game of the Week online with TorontoFC.ca is your debut from last year in Montreal. It was a real turning point in terms of the season. Maybe you can just take us back to that night at Stade Saputo, because... There
you go. Hold on.
Here you go.
I have something right here.
Show and tell.
I have the... show and tell. It was a gift from Ali Curtis, my first game.
Nice.
The official match roster. Look at that from that day.
Great. There you go.
KJ, can you remember what the 11 was? I can't. I've got no chance. And Omar can read it there. I'm not going to ask Terry because I know that he would have absolutely no idea. Can you?
Quinton Westberg, Auro, Omar Gonzalez, Chris Mavinga, Justin Morrow, Michael Bradley, Marky Delgado, Jonathan Osorio, Alejandro Pozuelo, Josie Altidore, and Altidore played up top with Pozuelo. I'm missing one. Put me out my misery. Who was it? Who's the other one?
Well, did you say Nick DeLeon?
No, I'm missing.
There you go.
There you go.
No, you're missing another one too. Jacob Schaffelberg
Schaffelberg, that's right. Okay.
Impressive, JJ.
Hey, there'd been a lot of talk for a while that you might be a Toronto FC player, not just even that season, but the season before that. There's all sorts of speculation, and then it was maybe you'd come for the start of March, and then you had to wait and come in July. So, what was it like when you finally got that moment when you were out there as a TFC player in Montreal?
Well, yeah, just like you said, there was a thing in April and May where I was going to come, and then had to wait until later to get signed, and then I had to go to Gold Cup, so I wasn't still able to join the team. And to be officially signed and watching from the Gold Cup was crazy, because I had Michael and Josie there just talking to me about everything, and to see them holding it down and still getting results was great to see. And I knew that I was going to be heading to a team that was deep, that was hungry, that was competitive, that could be able to get results in without some of their best players. And so I was excited to join them. And then when the day came against Montreal and I got to start, I was extremely happy, extremely excited just to be back in the league. And then to be with Toronto, who I was following closely for a long time while in Mexico when they were making their run and everything. And so, that day was incredible, just to be able to play away from home and get the result we needed to, propel us to go on this run that we did to eventually head to MLS Cup.
Omar, I remember interviewing you there at that game, and also post-game in the scrum afterwards. I always remember there was this glow about you, that you were back where you felt like you wanted to be playing and making a big difference. But I also remember there was almost a glow about everybody that I interviewed that night. And I think there was something a bit more special because it was Montreal. It was your first experience of playing them. But there's a lot of players that you knew, and you mentioned some of them were very close to you, that knew what that rivalry was like. Did they talk to you about that before? And what was your view of that rivalry afterwards? Because there's been some discussion this week on MLSsoccer.com about the best rivalries in the league. And we here up in Canada obviously believe that this is the best rivalry in the league. But what was it like for you amongst the players that week, and the experience of playing what is a despised rivalry here in Canada?
Yeah, well, it was a bit crazy, because heading into my first game, it was our biggest rivals. And so, it's a game where I knew it was going to be hard. It was going to be tough. Everyone's going to be getting into good challenges, and being your first game, you want to have a good game. And so, it's not comfortable. You're not playing at home, but we figured it out. Before the game, they showed us videos that the staff made, about all the fans, all the songs, and some of the history between the two clubs. So, I was able to get really into it and know what I was getting myself into, and that really helped.
Hey, Omar. So, guys, just the kind of character we all know, no pun intended, Big O is a good dude. So yesterday he gave up a good chunk of his afternoon to talk to and mentor the young center backs at TFC's academy in a small, intimate group. And one of the things that really stood out in the conversation was how when you came to Toronto, you really understood yourself as a player, but also your role as a defender. And I've not got the data in front of me or goals against when you played. But if maybe you could sort of pass on that conversation yesterday and what you actually brought to TFC since you've been here.
Yeah, so I mean, the initial conversations with Greg Vanny and Michael always in my ear about what he wants me to do and what I need to bring to the table to help out the team, and it was very helpful to really know how to get my mind frame right, heading to this club, what the club needed. And it was help in the back, a leader in the back. And so heading into my first game and so on, that's the player who I needed to become, and just a leader back there and helping everyone along, being organized. And I think as a whole, we did a pretty good job, because it was difficult. I only trained for a week before playing in that first game, the nice thing about it is I was getting thrown into a already developed, mature, um, fine-tuned team. I mean, this team has done a lot of amazing things together, and they know Greg's system. And so I had to play a little bit of catch-up. But the good thing is that I have great players around me, so that made it that much more easy. And so I just had to focus on being me and knowing what I could bring to the table. And so that's what I did.
To answer your question, sorry, Luke, to answer your question, by the way, Terry, I think without looking at my book, but it was 1.8 goals against average in 2018 and 19 before Omar came, and then it went down to 1.1 when he was playing in the game. So a dramatic improvement. But as Omar would tell us, he'd be the first to tell us.
I still want it lower.
Yeah, he still wants it lower. And as Omar and Greg Vanny have often say, it's a collective defensive responsibility that everybody's bought into during that time. Sorry, go ahead, Luke.
I was just going to ask about how, having turned everything mid-season when you came in, and obviously between then and the end of the season, TFC were one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference and in MLS as a whole. Then you have that end of the regular season where you managed to get the home playoff date, and then you have to sit and watch as the postseason gets underway. This team that you've been such a huge part of, but then it must have given you immense pride to see that even with the injury, and it wasn't just you, the issues that TFC had towards the end of the season with Josie as well. Again, as you mentioned before, you came in with the Gold Cup and all the players away and a squad of players who are able to combine and work together towards a goal. It almost happened again in the playoffs, didn't it? With you having to sit on the side and watch.
Yeah, it definitely happened. And it speaks to what I said before, that this team knows how to win. They've been thrown into the lion's den before, and they know how to bring it out again. And so, myself and Josie got injured, but everyone felt good. Everyone felt confident. After the first home game, we knew it was going to be tough playing the rest away from home. And so it was difficult, but everyone was up for the challenge. And we were really rolling by then, and we were confident enough to not be afraid about going to anyone's home and getting the result we needed. And so that was amazing to see, as a new guy coming in and seeing that mentality in this group was amazing. And it's easy because I myself am a winner, and to be thrown into this kind of group it just feels right for me. And I love being part of this group.
Hey, Omar, let me ask you, how fit were you for MLS Cup? I know you don't want to lean on it as excuses because you guys actually played really well that day. And obviously the deflection went in that changed the game, but you were for me, you were the best team for an hour. But now you can tell us, how fit were you into that? Because you'd obviously battled back. You've been left out a little bit when you placed on the bench in New York when we were there. What was that like for you to play that day physically for you?
Yeah, I mean, I worked my ass off to get, to stay fit and to make sure that if Greg decided to go with me, that I was going to be ready. And so I felt good. I felt good in warmups. I knew that it was going to be a good day, and unlucky for us not to get the result we needed and to be able to find the net earlier. But in the end, I did whatever I could to get myself ready, and I felt good that day.
Omar, let me ask you something before we leave. Have you seen the Last Dance documentary, the NBA Bulls one? Have you watched it?
I'm watching it right now. Yeah, it's
right.
Incredible.
It is great. I love it too. I wanted to ask you though, while we've got you on quickly, there's been a lot of discussion this week about leadership in professional sports based on the last episode where Michael Jordan almost breaks down when he's asked about whether you can be a nice guy and a true top leader. I want to ask you, because you and I have had these discussions on and off camera before about, you think about some of the leaders and the big stars that you played with, Beckham and Keane and Donovan, Michael Bradley here. What is your view about leaders and how different all of those were for you in molding you to help you? Because I know that you've gone from being that guy that you said was that 20-year-old kid coming in to now being a quiet leader yourself on a team. What's it like for you to be around different leaders like that?
Yeah, I think everyone leads in a different way, but in the heat of the moment, when you're on the field, when you're training and stuff, it gets intense. And so, I don't have a problem with it getting intense like that. If they're or whatever, it is what it is. These guys want to win so bad. I think about like Robbie Keane, David Beckham, Landon. I mean, these guys were it was the same thing. I mean, great guys off the court or off the field, but when it's time to play, they want to win at all costs, and it's the same thing. Michael Bradley's the same way, and you need that. You need that to get guys on the same page, to bring it every single day. So I think that last episode was just a bit crazy. Who cares if you're a nice guy on the field? No one wants a nice guy on the field. I don't want my teammate to be a nice guy. Off the field when we're, hanging out and stuff like that, they're great guys, amazing guys. But on the pitch, on the court, if your teammates aren't up to it that day, then you got to get in their ass to get them going. And so, I don't know. I thought that was a bit weird for them to question like that. Being a leader, being the main guy, you got to do what you got to do to get everyone else on the same page.
Spoken like a true winner, like yourself.
Terry, you talked about the academy kids at TFC. You're around the training facility a lot, of course. You see what leadership does. And we talk about defensively TFC improving last year, but they also improved because they got Omar Gonzalez and his leadership and personal qualities in, didn't they?
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you look at TFC's squad, it's extremely diverse. It's pretty unique. And I think when you say leadership at the central part of that hub, you've got Michael Bradley and Greg Vanning, and then our senior management team. But then there's also so many individuals like Omar that lead in their own way, and they understand what their qualities are, and are just themselves. And eventually over time, they build almost credit within the squad, and naturally, your leaders just present themselves. And I think what they do is push one another to get better and better. And it was funny yesterday going through some of Omar's clips with some of the little dudes or young guys. He's actually, I could have done better here. Terry, if I could do this again, I would have done this. And you're talking about a guy who's won 3 MLS Cups in his first year, went down to Mexico and won a trophy, and played in World Cups, played against Germany, played against Messi and Ronaldo. And he's still saying, I can do better. And that goes to the culture, but also the characters at Toronto FC.
Quick story before we go, Luke, on Omar Gonzalez. I remember being between media responsibilities when I first started before, just as I was starting to get to go with TSN, and I just left the score and I was in between, and I wanted to continue to get better. So what I started to do was I used to go to TFC games with my media pass, and I used to sit in the stands and I used to take photographs, and I used to take still images and videos, and then do little things on my old blog about how this player. And when LA Galaxy came to town, I did it on him. And afterwards, I would talk to him, and he taught me through the game. And at that point, this was back in, I think, 2012, Omar Gonzalez and I sat for about 25 minutes post-game talking about how he'd worked so much on his technical ability and how comfortable he is with the ball. And I think he'd be the first one to tell you, and he's told me this, he's still, to this day, to Terry's point, working on it. Every single game, he thinks he can get better on it. So, that's something that I think with him is a great thing. He's never comfortable. He's always pushing himself. And the other thing, too, is that the game's about combinations and teamwork. And he actually is very, very good for Chris Mavinga. It's actually a good blend between the two of them. Both very comfortable on the ball, but Mavinga's a bit more aggressive to step up. He's a bit more aggressive in terms of his how he talks, and he's a bit more emotional. And Omar's got a bit more of that coolness and calmness, and I think that makes the two of them more better as a combination. And don't make a mistake, Omar's not soft. He's really tough, as you can see there, and that magnificent answer that he gave me. So that shouldn't be forgotten, but it's a little bit of a different way and a bit more inwardly than Chris Mavinga's.
What's quite interesting, KJ, is I think at Toronto FC, he's able to just be himself. He's at home. And whether it's Chris Mavinga or Laurent Simon, as we saw in the playoffs, or Zavaleta, who's ever beside him, De La Garza, he's going to find a way to make it work. And I think one of the other reasons why players love playing for Toronto FC, and a lot of players come to Toronto and get better, is the style of play. The philosophy isn't too dissimilar to maybe how Barcelona play, where we try to shift the opposition to one side to now get to the other, or draw them to us to get in behind. And what it does is it challenges the players. And as you can see, Omar loves every minute of that.
Tal, it's been great to have you with us today in the absence of the captain, Stephen Caldwell. Thanks to everyone for watching. Great to have you with us. If Caldwell's not back next week, it's load management, right? So we'll have to see whether he's fit and ready to go, but see you next week.